We're all set. Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to the Board of Education meeting, October 14th. Just a quick housekeeping item. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in board administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind doing roll call?
Here.
Was that the hardest? Hello.
I'll say hello. I'll say hello.
Hello, Matt.
Here.
Ms. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Kenny.
Here.
Mr. Ryan. Here. Mr. Valenti. Ms. Weber.
Here. Thank you. If you're able, can you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is over by the door. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, sorry. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining. Opening comments. Although we didn't have school today, I just want to mention that the entire teaching staff was here today, bright and early working. So while the students were out, the staff were not, and they had a hopefully a very productive day, but they were here bright and early working on behalf of our students. I also like to thank Kelsey and Ryan, who are helping us videotape. I'd like to mention your names in case your parents think you're not here. This way you have proof I was here. Again, when we have kids in the hospital, they hand you a book that says trust but verify. This is your parents verifying that you're actually here filming, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's super helpful to us. So without further ado, we have a packed agenda. I'm going to ask Dr. LaSousa to go right into his report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. The entirety of my report tonight will be dedicated to a status update and status check on student well-being and student wellness in the school district. You all know that this has been an area that we've tried to cast a bright light on in recent years, and we've gone probably about 6 years now, every other year, conducting a survey of our students in grades 6 through 12 to see how they're perceiving their school environments and what kind of habits they're involved with. So once again, this year, as we did 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, we've invited in to the meeting Lisa Lattarulo, Christine Mahoney, and Alex Mandala. They are our student assistance counselors. Ms. Mahoney wasn't with us last time because her position was one that we created about a year and a half ago in order to invest more resources in this crucial area, because all of us have concerns about the well-being of our students, in particular, some of the social and emotional and mental issues that surround well-being and students. And the three of them are going to present some of the highlights or the takeaways from the survey that we carried out last year, and then they'll also discuss trends that they're seeing with our students. They'll take any questions that you have and talk about ways that we're trying to support our students and ensure that they're getting everything they need from a social and emotional standpoint. So without further ado, I'm going to ask them to come up. I think they'll need to probably present mainly from the board. So if the Board of Education members can grab a seat with the rest of the audience, that would be great. And I turn it over to Lisa, Christine, and Alex.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Christine Mahoney. I'm one of the new student assistance counselors here. I have a split position between the high school and the middle school. So I'd like to move forward in the updates for student wellness. Some of the takeaways from the presentation are the following. So for the most part, not much has changed in substance use. Vaping has been on everyone's mind, especially students. There's been attitudes on marijuana, that have been shifting, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Sleep correlating with well-being. Females are feeling more stressed, and students are generally feeling safe. And all in all, with district support, we'll be able to be more proactive and preventative. All right, so the Student Wellness Survey 2019, it was completed in February. We did have, it was 100 fewer students that participated at both CMS and CHS. For the most part, the statistics were the same from 2016. There were some cross-tabulations that were done within the survey and included sleep, drug trends, gender differences, safety, and mental health. Okay, so just bear with me. I'm going to go over vaping. First and foremost, it's a big concern of ours. It's definitely been something that's been widely discussed on a national level, state level, and of course within our school district itself. As I'm sure a lot of you know, there's been a lot of illnesses that have been linked to vaping. One of the reasons why the CDC has urged people to stop vaping. So going into everything, there are a lot of health concerns and risks, to vaping. And I think for the most part, there's also a lot of misperceptions about vaping within the school district. A lot of, there are kids and students that feel that vaping is safe. It's water vapor. There's no water in it. Vapes don't contain nicotine. And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is not factual. So generally speaking, we don't know what's actually in vaping cartridges or the e-juice for that matter. The FDA is not regulating a lot of this stuff, and it never has. So a lot of the ingredients are not listed on the different boxes, so to speak. So you don't really know exactly what's in them. Juul is the most popular e-cigarette in Chatham. Although students, they don't seem to associate juuling with vaping or using an e-cigarette. So kind of coming back to the facts of what we do know. Nicotine is absolutely in a lot of these products. It definitely has a high potency, and I'm going to go through all of that in a second. There are short-term and long-term effects, but unfortunately we don't know all of those effects. We're still kind of learning. We're gathering a lot of this information. And, as we start trying to understand what's happening, I think it's also going to play a role in how we then prevent it and how we help our student body here. So going into potency, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background before I move on. There's been an increased potency of nicotine in marijuana. So to give you guys an idea, I'm going to break this down for you. So nicotine, so in one Juul pod, which I have here just to show you guys, if you guys don't know what a Juul pod is, one Juul pod is equivalent to 20 cigarettes. That is a lot of nicotine. And this is not mine, I promise. And then one cigarette, just to kind of quickly go through this, 1.2 milligrams of nicotine, and approximately it's like 0.1 milligrams of nicotine is actually absorbed just by smoking just one cigarette. In comparison, just the standard Juul pod, which is 5%, they come in 5%, 3%, just means that 5% nicotine is in one and 3% nicotine is in another. It's equivalent to the following. So a 5% Juul pod is equivalent to 40 milligrams of nicotine. A 3% Juul pod is equivalent to 23 milligrams of nicotine. That is a lot of nicotine that students are intaking. And what we've been seeing a lot recently has been that the common additive that's been being put into these vapes is THC, or marijuana, I'm sorry, the chemical component being THC. So a lot of kids, whether it's here and other towns, kind of all over, right? It's not just here in Chatham. It happens everywhere. The students or kids are, vaping these high potency vapes. or the THC within them. And due to the high potency, we're seeing a lot of side effects here. And it's very scary. The side effects, there's a bunch. Short-term is, memory loss, trouble concentrating, panic attacks, paranoia, trouble sleeping, increased heart rate, and even seizures. And this has kind of been a little bit on the news. We have not seen this here in Chatham, though, per se, as far as like seizures or anything of that sort. But it does happen, and a lot of times it goes unreported. Long-term effects, we don't really know. That's kind of the scary thing here. Marijuana potency, going into this, I went to a conference, an opioid and marijuana conference, and they did state some of these statistics, which I found to be interesting, and I wanted to share with all of you. One of which being the potency of marijuana. The strains itself are 10 times more potent now than they were in 1992. And then the potency per vape cartridge is actually 23 times more potent than it was in 1992. That is significant. In addition to that, the THC concentrates. A lot of times, adolescents will gravitate towards using the THC concentrates because they think that they're going to get high more quickly, because they think that it's more potent. And unfortunately, what I learned at this particular conference, and again, we're still gathering information, but what I learned was that in these concentrates, there's only actually a little bit of THC, and that a lot of it is like a lot of these unknown chemicals that we don't know anything about, that people are putting into their bodies, one of which actually being fentanyl. So it only takes a little bit of fentanyl to obviously die instantly. It's very serious. I just want to quickly mention that I think access is also a big component to a lot of this. Adolescents can go on Amazon, right? They can buy whatever they would like off of Amazon, buy with one click. It's very easy to access, or they get a gift card from somebody. They input the gift card, and maybe they're getting stuff from China, right? The China is a huge resource to a lot of this stuff, and there's been a lot of news articles out there that have, mentioned that the quality and the consistency and just the unknown and uncertainty of the chemicals that are actually being put in this stuff are just, we just don't know what they are. It's not, it's just not good stuff. So kind of fast forwarding now. So the adolescent brain is still developing, right? The adolescent brain develops until about age 25. So having a lot of these chemicals that, either we know a little bit about or we don't know anything about, it's not going to help our students to be able to succeed long term. One of which I just wanted to say, kind of going back to the facts, one of the chemicals, formaldehyde, right? Embalming, used in pesticide. It's one of the chemicals that you do find in a lot of these cartridges, and it is known to cause cancer. So although there are facts, or there are things that are facts out there, there's also things too that we're just unsure of. So I think for right now, kind of bringing it back to what the facts are can be helpful. Attitudes on marijuana. So the survey showed that the students' perception of great risk for trying marijuana once or twice actually decreased in 2019 to 14.5%, and then from 18.7% in 2016 when this survey was completed. Students in general perceive less risk and disapproval as they get older. And then I think, at least I can only speak for myself, but one of the things I've been seeing for students that do come and they seek help, which is wonderful, one of their struggles is being very addicted to a lot of these chemicals in these vapes. And because of that, they don't know how to stop. They try to stop, they can't stop. I've had parents, at times call me, and they just don't know what to do. Of course, as you increase potency, you increase the potential for addiction and even overdose. So we're working on that, and actually we'll get into, what we're doing to kind of support that cause and help our students going forward. All right, so as far now that I gave you kind of that background, the vaping survey results. So 9.8% of our students reported using e-cigarettes in the past 30 days. 54.3% of high school students reported seeing at least one person vaping in the past year, with 9.7% of those students seeing at least one person vaping in the past day. And then just lastly, 7.6% of students reported being more likely to get e-cigarettes and marijuana from peers in school, and 6.1% of students reported getting these substances outside of school. So although those are not high percentages, it still is happening. And it's just something that I think I think we're doing a great job in prevention. And I just, we're going to keep doing, our best to make sure that our students are supported in the best way that they can be.
I'm Alex Mandela. I'm at the middle school full-time. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk to you about sleep across the grade levels, sleep across gender, a little bit about stress levels of our students, and then finally suicide risk. And then we'll kind of look at all of those at the same time. So I'll take you through a couple of different graphs. While we kind of go through a couple of those facts. So this may seem like a lot of just lines on a graph, but if you look at it, it's sleep across 6th through 12th graders. So each line represents one of the grade levels of students, and the graph from left to right is reported more amount of sleep, and then on the right is reported less amount of sleep. So on the right is 9 or more hours, and then it goes down to 4 or 5 hours of sleep on a typical weeknight. Then if you want to, thank you. So really to understand it and make a little bit more sense, it's interesting how our grade levels of students really are kind of sleeping in similar amounts. So our middle schoolers are really concentrated in that 7 to 9 plus percentage or number of hours of sleep, and the next group a little bit farther down averages about 7. This is the 9th through 11th graders primarily, average about 7 hours of sleep per night, and then the average of the high schoolers altogether is really 6 to 7 hours, and that's a little bit skewed because our 12th graders really are sleeping the least. And you can kind of see it on that last part of the graph that the 12th graders kind of skew the high school results just a little bit. So they're similar across 9th through 11th grade, and then our 12th graders are really the ones that are sleeping the least. Sleep differences between gender. So the blue line is males, and the orange, I don't know what color this is females. So again, same scale with 9 or more hours on the left and then less amount of sleep on the right. So this is showing that our students reported that males are sleeping a little bit more than females. So females are averaging 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and males are averaging 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. So females are just a little bit less. And then looking at suicide risk, so we're looking at each of these a little bit independently. So if we remember, our 12th graders are sleeping least of all. Our females are sleeping a little bit less. So now we're going to kind of look at suicide risk, and then we're going to put it all together. So suicide risk across 6th through 12th graders, if you look at the bottom of the scale, it's 6th, 7th, 8th, and it goes across to 12th on the right. So I want to first draw your attention to the 6th, 7th, 9th, and 11th graders, which all report, the question that they asked specifically was how many hours of, hit the left arrow. Awesome, thank you. So the question that they asked was specifically in a 12-month period, have you seriously considered suicide? So of the students that answered yes, this is what this graph is representing. So the 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders all responded within a 2.5% range. So they were all anywhere between 6.3%, I believe, and 8.8%. And our 8th graders really had the lowest rate at 3.0%, which is interesting. Keep in mind, this survey was from last year. So if you're thinking about the classes, this is our current 9th grade class. And then our 12th graders, I also want to bring your attention to, because Their percentage was the highest at 11.4, which is more than 2.5% higher than even the highest of the range. So when you're looking at that range where a lot of the grades fall into, 2.5% higher than even the top of that is where our 12th graders fell. So now when we're looking at it all together, we were able to correlate this year's sleep with some of the answers to these questions. So we looked at how many hours of sleep the students were getting and then what those specific students answered as far as the other risk factor questions. So again, this is our graph with the hours of sleep. So 9 or more hours is on the left, 4 or fewer is on the right. Students who sleep less also report more stress, which is that blue line on the top, more thoughts of suicide, which is the orange line in the middle, and more plans for suicide. So we took it a step further and asked them how many of them have actually made a plan for suicide. And those are the gray bar on the bottom, line on the bottom. So you can really see that the less sleep they're getting, the higher risk they are. So then we wanted to also look at gender because females were getting less sleep. So now we were looking at females and males on a stress level perspective. So there's 2 graphs here. It's really hard to read the bottom, so I'll explain them to you. So the 4 bars on the left are males. The 4 bars on the right are females. And then from left to right, the bar on the very far left, the blue one, is reported. It's how much stress you've experienced in a typical week. So from left to right, it's no stress. The blue is no stress. The green is a little bit of stress. The gray is moderate stress. And the one all the way on the right is also a deeper blue, and that's great stress. So our males on the left graph reported more than females, no stress and little stress. And then if you look at our females on the right graph, they reported great stress all the way on the right and moderate stress higher than our males did. Then we looked at sources of academic pressure. So if you experience academic pressure, where does it come from? So our females are the green, our males are the blue. So you can see that our females, I'm going to bring your attention really quick to the right-hand side. The green all the way at the bottom, this is, I have not experienced academic pressure. So taking out that, we have about 4% of females having not experienced academic pressure. And then the blue is about, males are 11.4, I think, percent have not experienced academic pressure. So now all of the students who had experienced it, all the way on the left is they've experienced academic pressure from themselves. So females and males both experience that at a higher rate. Females a little bit more than males. The second group in is peers. So they've experienced academic pressure from each other, from their peers. Females almost double the percentage of males experience pressure from their peers. From teachers, which is the one in the middle, females experience more stress or pressure coming from teachers than males do. And then parents, both males and females experience pressure from parents second. Most of all, so self is first, parents was second. This one, males did experience a little bit more pressure from parents than females did. Then we looked at hours of homework by gender. So how many hours of homework students are typically doing per night or on a typical weeknight. So on the left, it's less than 1 hour of homework per night. And then in the middle is 1 to 2 hours per night. And then the next one is 3 to 4 hours per night. And then all the way on the right is 5 or more hours of homework per night. So the green, again, is females, blue is males. So the higher amounts of homework or more amounts of time spent on homework, females are reporting that they're spending more time on their homework than males are. So kind of putting that all together and then adding a couple more things, it seems that females are reporting more high and moderate rates of stress in a typical week, more academic pressure, more time spent on homework. When we asked them how they cope under pressure, males were much more likely than females to say they're cool and calm under pressure. Females also were more likely than males to say that they could not cope with all the things they had to do. They feel less positively about themselves, and they take less time to do something that they enjoy. So we noticed those trends kind of coming out in the survey as well. As far as risky behavior, other than substance use, because we kind of touched upon that before, we asked them about their perceptions of sending a racy message or picture electronically to someone else. more males feel that it's okay to send this type of message to someone else, while females are more likely to have sent one of these messages. So that doesn't exactly line up. Females don't think it's okay, but they're sending these photos a little bit more often. And then as far as the grade levels with that question, it was to be expected that our older students are more likely to feel it's okay to send this type of message, but also still concerning that students, as they're getting older, are starting to think that it's okay to start engaging in this type of messaging. So, thank you very much.
So I am going to speak next. I'm Lisa Latarullo, and I am speaking about safety and security in our schools. We did add some questions this year to the survey to really get a better idea of how kids are feeling in our schools and whether or not they feel safe. And these are sort of climate questions. We always ask climate questions, but we sort of asked more specific questions. So this graph that we're looking at is a question on how safe do you feel when a police officer is present in school? And overwhelmingly, our students feel safe when a police officer is present in school. Close to 90% of kids responded and said that they felt moderately to very safe. So that's a good thing. Keep in mind this survey was also done prior to our Class 3 officers being put into school. So it will be interesting to see. I would imagine that statistics would go up probably as a result, because they're already quite high as is. One interesting note to look at, though, is that males do feel more safe than females. So again, we're looking at these gender differences, like Alex was just speaking about some of these gender differences with females and some of these wellness things. We are also looking at this, again, as a gender difference where females feel less safe at school than males. But overwhelmingly, with that question, they did feel pretty good. Okay, so the next slide. So the next question was about how often, and this was an added question this year, how often do you worry about a school shooting taking place at your school? And most of these kids are worried. 2/3 of our population is worried about it, at some degree of worrying about a school shooting taking place. So it's definitely something to look at and to think about, that kids come into school and it is something that's on their mind. Obviously, if you read the news and you watch the news, you will see almost all the time there are shootings going on all the time. And we are living in an age where people are bombarded with news and updates all the time. It's hard to get away from that information. I know for even my own children, they tell me, did you hear another shooting took place? I mean, my son just came to me last night and told me about another shooting. So this is something that's on their minds. So this, to me, does not surprise me that they're worried about it, because there's so much information that's out there about it. But again, if you look at the statistics, females are more worried than males. The graph all the way on the right shows that difference, worrying about it a lot. Females worried about it a lot more than males. So it is something to, at least consider and to think about our population and how they feel coming to school every day. Okay, the next slide. Now I'm shifting gears a little bit to mental health. So last time we presented, Alex and I presented, we shared with the board about our risk assessments, the number of risk assessments being done within district. A risk assessment is conducted on a student who is found to be potentially at risk for suicide or self-harm. So somehow or another it's brought to somebody's attention within the school that a child is in distress. So these are risk assessments that are done by counselors. Okay, so counselors, child study team members, certain child study team members can do risk assessments. So these are the numbers. And you can see from the data from 2014 up to 2018, there is an uptick in the number of risk assessments that have been done within district. Okay, so why is this happening? That's probably going to be a question that people are thinking about right now, is why is this happening? We don't know for sure, obviously, but I will say that certainly Alex and I, over the last several years, have really tried and advocated for kids to step up and to talk and to ask for help. that information is out there. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting that information out there. So maybe part of it is that kids are kind of coming forward with that information. And they're just being identified. I mean, they're just being identified more, which is a good thing. I mean, we want that. We want to intervene and be able to help. Because from a risk assessment, parents are going to be involved. There's going to be recommendations for help. Resources will be given to that child and the family. So that's a good thing if they are brought to our attention and we can assess them, because then we know who they are, and we can give them that support. So, while I can't answer that question for sure of why they have upticked, I would imagine that part of it comes from that. One other thing that I would say that may have an impact on this, and I was going to talk about this in a moment, is that we are now, as a district, monitoring, well, I guess we have been monitoring, but now we are monitoring and getting alerts on emails that students may send or any sort of internet access that they have. So when they're using the Chatham network and they start doing internet searches, if something concerning or troubling they are searching is flagged, this is going to be brought to our attention. So we, as the student assistance counselors, we get these alerts, and we get them often, daily. And so when we get these alerts, then we have to assess what's going on. And most of them are nothing, but sometimes they are something. And so at least we are catching some of those, because maybe those would be kids we would never have known about. So that may also be part of where these risk assessments could be coming from as well. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so since the last time we presented in February 2018. And that was for 2017 survey results. So what have we done since then? These are just some of the initiatives and things that have happened district-wide. I'm not saying this is, something that just Alex and I have done. These are district-wide initiatives that have taken place to really address student wellness and to help identify students and give them more support. So one is the additional staff. We have Christine Mahoney now, additional SAC. There are 2 additional school psychologists. We now have health content leaders, and there is also now the creation of a supervisor of student wellness. So there's now additional staff that's addressing SEL and addressing health curriculum and also giving the emotional, mental health support to students within schools. We're also expanding the health curriculum. We are now doing Lifelines, which is a suicide prevention curriculum. This is done at the middle school level at 7th grade and at 9th grade level. And so this is taught by the student assistance counselors. Alex, Christine, and myself are teaching those. So again, the Lifelines is another avenue for kids to learn about how to help, how to speak up, how to identify if somebody needs help, how they identify if they need help themselves. So that's a curriculum that sits now in the health classes. And we're also doing vaping curriculum. So 8th graders and 9th graders now have up-to-date new information on vaping and getting the information to those kids. I would say it probably needs to be even younger. I just went to a presentation where it should start at 6th grade. So I think that's something to also look at, that we need to get that information down to the younger levels as well. The social emotional learning, just a lot more training and raising more awareness about some of the social emotional needs of students and how that impacts their education. So the training of administrative staff and the continued programming that we have within district, which is Challenge Day is now also at the middle school. It was always at the high school. We've just had Challenge Day a few weeks ago. Middle school Challenge Day is coming up next week. So this will be the 2nd year at the middle school. That is a social emotional learning program. It's also an anti-bullying program, but it's been very effective here and in Chatham schools. Our health curriculum, just updating our health curriculum. We did, as I mentioned, we have these health content leaders, which I am one of them. So I work on the health curriculum with that, and just the overall instruction and of the social emotional learning programs that are being put into the schools. One thing that happened up here at the high school as well is we have the rest and relaxation room, which is now a space that is open every day during lunch for kids to go and just be in a quiet space and just to have a place where they can sort of relax and get away from noise and distractions. So that is something that started last fall, but now we actually have it every day at the high school. So another space for kids to be. The security alerts, that's another thing that we are now doing, which I just mentioned before. That's something that is pretty active. The professional development, current drug trends. We did a program with the phys ed and health and phys ed teachers, middle school, high school last year, just giving them updates on drug trends. So we had somebody come in from a treatment center and do professional development for them, and ongoing wellness programs for them as well. And this year, what we are working on currently to address the vaping is there will be a professional development for staff on vaping coming up in the next couple of weeks. Christine and I are working on a vaping video that will be at the high school that will be shown to students and staff. And we are also working on a parent program with a panel discussion on vaping, which would include different people from the community to speak from their perspective of how vaping is impacting young people. So that's something that we're currently doing. And then, of course, we're also just maintaining all of our other programs and our community resources because we, as a SACS, also have contact with the Municipal Alliance as well as the Madison Chatham Coalition, which are community-based organizations that do all the prevention work for the community of Chatham. And so we are active members on both of those committees. So, with all that said, which is a lot of information, we will take some questions. And I think we came close to 30 minutes.
Thank you very much, Lisa, Alex, and Christine. This is just a small sampling, really, of all the data that's in the survey, which we will post on our website. But yes, board members have an opportunity for questions, and I know Sal's got the first one.
Hi, first of all, thank you all for your efforts.
Sure.
I noticed one of the statistics, so I'm going to ask you a question and then hopefully not pontificate.
Okay.
So the question, 8 assessments, risk assessments in 2014, 24, 25 now. Of the 24, 25 now, how many of them resulted from the kid coming to you and saying, I need help, versus you noticing one kid and saying, I'm going to go check out how that kid's doing?
I actually don't know that exact data because I don't do all the risk assessments, right? So this is any school counselor that is doing that data, that is seeing that student. We're not all privy to how that all came to each risk assessment came to somebody. So I actually don't have that exact data. I can tell you, what? Yeah, I mean, we certainly could, but I will tell you from my experience, just because I can look at last year's data, I probably did 75% of the risk assessments done at the high school last year, so I was familiar with them. The majority of them, somebody else is bringing them to me.
So, and the reason why I'm going down this path is because it occurs to me, we have a very high-performing, high-stress academic district.
Yes.
And there's this tremendous pressure, and it looks like especially among females, you want to perform. There's stress to perform academically. There's stress to feel normal. There's stress to, hey, everyone's, they're applying to Villanova and this school and that school. I want to apply here. There's this tremendous stress. So the bell curve is definitely skewed in this town, and the stress level is definitely skewed. But the people who are, it would occur to me, the people who are more likely to be at risk are the type that are afraid of conflict. They're afraid to come forward. They want to fade into the background more than anything else. And they're the ones who might be most at risk. So I'd love to see, if there's 4 of you right now, I'd love to see 8 of you, and I'd love to hear you report eventually to Mike and come up with ideas. How can we proactively learn how to recognize them, because they're not necessarily going to come to us? That's my only point.
I agree with you because I always talk about those kids in the middle, the kids that do fly under the radar. They're probably feeling a lot of pressure and stress and things, but they wear the mask really well. They kind of can plow through and nothing's going on. But those are the kids that you do worry about because they're the ones that probably could really use the support. So we really have to do a good job of getting to them and trying to intervene. And I would say you have to try to intervene early. And so much of it comes back to the relationships people in the school have with our kids. Absolutely. I mean, we have fantastic staff members. I mean, I can speak to the high school because that's where I am. But I have a lot of staff members. They will come in and they're like, I am really worried about this kid. I really am concerned. I see a difference. Something's going on. And it's those relationships that it matters. It absolutely matters to have your staff keyed in on what's going on with kids and know what's out there and what's happening, because they're the ones that are going to see what if there's a shift or a change or something going on. They're seeing them day in and day out.
And then
but trying to catch those kids early is important.
So I think you all do a fantastic job. And I also noticed that senior year is much tougher for everyone, and yet again, especially for our young women. And the stress level, the amount of sleep, the correlations, all of it, put together. And this pressure to be normal, whatever normal is, it also occurs to me that somehow we as a district could do a better job of making people understand that not the only path is to do, 4 years of high school and then I'm going to Villanova and then, I'm going to go here. And, there are other paths and there are other journeys. And kids should, not only should they be available on a bulletin board for kids to look at as they walk by in class, but so that they feel this is a really normal, viable alternative for me if I go this route. Anyway, thank you again. You guys are fantastic, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
My question is, one thing I'm surprised to not see on here is what the impact of social media is on stress and mental health. I mean, to me, actually, I think it's probably a lot worse than vaping. So number one, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and how we're addressing it and what kind of statistics you're trying to, or if it's even possible. I don't know if you can quantify, qualify, whichever file you want to look at it. But what steps are we taking trying to reduce the impact of social media? Because we don't know as much as we don't know what the impact of vaping is on someone's body 10 years down the road, we don't know what the mental impact of social media is going to be on our kids. I mean, you read now about more and more schools banning social media at schools. There's things I would like to see in terms of creating better social interaction at this school. I'd like to see the kids actually lead that effort more than we as adults. I'd like to see our senior council become more active in terms of implementing things during the school day to help to enhance the school day in terms of interaction. I think interaction is so important in terms of how our kids even feel about themselves. But I'd like to hear, where you guys sit on that. I'd imagine maybe next year you probably add that as a third leg of this and start trying to quantify them as to sleep, vape, everything else into one, into a similar chart. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
We have data on how many hours kids are spending on social media from our survey, but we don't have the correlated data with their stress level with the number of hours that they're spending on social media. So that would be really interesting to look at to see if that is something that's correlated, and then see if if females are experiencing more stress from that as well, and just kind of layer all of these things and see what seems to be predominant and what the patterns are. I think that'd be really interesting.
Are you seeing, what are the trends in other schools that you guys are reading this a lot more than I am in terms of what they're doing to combat the impacts of social media, either from teaching the kids or doing things within the school day, or trying to create initiatives to try to reduce the dependency upon social media? Is there stuff that you guys think you're at the point whereby you're going to come back to the Board of Education and say, these are things that I think we should start looking at to implement? I mean, of course, we'd love to see you guys lead from that perspective, but to me, I think the impact of social media is the worst thing that I think we can experience. I don't think we can sit here and be at all of the opinion that we can't be out in front of it. We have to be out in front of it. So I would love, and Mike, I don't know if this is the right spot or the right time, but please just know that there's more billions of support from our perspective to be a part of any initiative or to accept your recommendations in terms of initiatives, because if we're not ahead of the game, we're gonna lose, and that's just unacceptable to me.
I think one thing that I just want to mention that we have been doing is, providing peer support groups, for students. if social media and maybe, I don't know, cyberbullying or whatever may come up for them, whether it's stress related or they're anxious because, something has, occurred on social media, we do provide these as resources. Myself, Lisa, we have a few school counselors that step in, and we have been providing these peer support groups at lunch. From my standpoint, one of the most important things is for the students to be able to build a rapport with one of us or their school counselors, because that's, I think, the first step in order for them to open up and to feel comfortable opening up. And so that's something that we've been doing that I definitely feel like we all take pride in order to further support them and at least point them in the right direction of resources if we ourselves can't, help them. They, in these groups that we have, there's, for the most part, other students, a majority of them that are struggling with very similar issues, which is nice because then they have the peer support and then they also have the staff support.
So students are utilizing it.
Yeah, oh, yes.
We do, I will mention, we do have curricular programming in place now that we did not have in place 10 years ago about
Digital footprints.
online presence, digital footprints, social media use. We had we had 3 presentations this morning for the entire staff, and one of them actually was about this very thing. And the message from the staff member who was delivering the presentation was essentially that in order to help our children, we need to help ourselves first, and we need to model what is appropriate cell phone use, what is appropriate checking of social media on a regular basis at dinner time, whenever it might be. And it was thought-provoking because, of course, we all have phones in our pockets and we all are attached to our phones, and we all could probably use a reminder that it's important that to consider what we're modeling to our kids, our own children, and our students when we are attached to phones. I also mentioned, Matt, that we do have data about this in the survey, and we post the whole survey online. You'll be able to see it. But our females are engaging in social media use more often than our males also. So it's another one of those gender lines that we see that is potentially concerning.
Yeah. It is concerning. I mean, the social media, there's no doubt. It's concerning. And so much of it is trying to get them to get out of it, to encourage them to stop. It's just or to limit it, as much as possible. But it's challenging. There's absolutely, it's challenging.
We can measure it at school.
Well, we measured it by asking them how many hours did they spend doing it. And
You can't hack into their phones.
it was
but
During lunch, honestly, 'cause I like to see, we have an hour lunch, I'd
We-
like to see if the kids are on their phones for 58 of the 60 minutes. I'd like to, that would be an interesting.
we can get some of that from Securely. Like we know
Yes,
what kinds,
yes.
we know what categories certain alerts fall into in Securely. We can see what they're trying to access that we're blocking with our filter. So we can get some of that. I don't know if it will really tell us, though, how much they're doing it because they're doing so much of it outside of school.
Yeah.
I think something, just to dovetail on what Matt said, is certain schools are having phone-free. There was a whole, it was on
Yes.
last year. I mean, it was really telling that they would have to go into a classroom and take their phone and put it in like a cubby. So,
Yes.
and you could see it. They noted that the kids had to physically see where their phone was. And then they would go and take their seat. It was in a high school. And the kids reported anxiety during the transition away from their phone initially. But then as they went through the course of the year, and they did not have their phone on them they would drop it off on their way into classroom, go sit down. They performed better. They engaged. Kids who typically were not engaging. It was the whole Diane Sawyer, I don't know if anyone, is it my, if it's like disconnected or connect, right? And it showed, and I've now read up on it, and they are more apt to learn if they don't even have their phone in their backpack, because often they're thinking about when can I check my phone.
There are teachers here that do that, and
Yeah.
kids,
Right. So
I
think-
definitely think kids are seeing a difference in.
Yeah, and I think that phone, there can be times, I think, that we can do better and create times and learning spaces that are free of phones.
Yeah, and also kind of, we don't want kids to step into school and say, the only time that you get a pause from your phone is when you're in school. They
Oh, no,
need
I
to,
agree.
right? They absolutely need to understand you need to have a pause from this other places. So parents need to pull phones from their kids because they need to know what it feels like to be away from their phone. They shouldn't have to walk into math class and be like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out because I'm away from my phone because I'm never away from my phone. There needs to be other times in their life that their phone is pulled away and they survive and they're fine and they're okay and the world does not combust. But they need to practice that. I just know from a personal standpoint, like my own children, kids come in my house, I take kids' phones. You all hang out together, there's no phones. I keep the phone until you go home. So it's part of it is practice, getting them to practice. And guess what? They're all fine. They're teenagers and they're fine. They're all fine by themselves for hours without their phones. But that's part of it. You have to start practicing that so it becomes more normalized for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the juuling thing or the vaping thing. Are you seeing, I've been kind of surveying some kids, my own kids, one in college, one in high school. I also talked to Mr. Groh about it. Are you seeing, for as much as you would see any kids vaping, a decrease since a lot of these news articles have been coming out? I know my kids personally have said, I have a senior in high school and I have a junior in college, and both of them are saying it's astronomical, the decrease in vaping since all of these news articles have come out. I mean, my college kid said, Mom, nobody vapes anymore. It's so passé that it's not happening. At least at the college level. My senior says it's rare that they see it in the high school anymore. Darren said, this year in particular, at this point of the year, he would have caught, 25 to 30 kids in the bathroom vaping, and it's, a single digit number at this point. Are you seeing the same thing?
I mean, like anecdotally.
And I'm just talking at the high school level.
Yeah,
really,
I mean, this is more anecdotally just what kids are reporting to us. I mean, I am personally not seeing that. I'm seeing the kids going, I'm really addicted to this. I don't know how to stop.
I mean, that was,
Okay.
I was going to ask the same thing, that I bet if we gave this survey to kids now, just relating to vaping, I think they would express different sentiments, but I think addiction to nicotine is a serious addiction. And I think when kids are reporting that they're stopping, and we're stopping, and I'm stopping, I threw my Juul out, I'm stopping, it's hard to stop. And it's hard to stop by yourself. I mean, there are withdrawal symptoms, there are all sorts of physical and mental issues that go along with it. And I would love us to be able to find out kind of a little more information from our kids and randomly to see how many of our kids really truly need help right now. And if I know these kids are scared. They've seen this, it's scary. But when you can't stop doing something and you're really scared and you know it's bad for you, but you still can't stop doing it, and you need help, and you may not go to your parents because they're going to yell at you and tell you to stop. And I told you to stop, but you can't stop. So I noticed on one of the slides that there are groups, groups of, that you're helping to, work with them. But I think we need to give our kids avenues and pathways to get help, whether we're posting signs out there on bathroom doors, wherever. Here's a number you can call. Here's a place you can go. Because nicotine is more addicting than many other things. And these kids will want to stop, and they're scared, but they don't know how. And I don't have the solution. So.
Yeah, so absolutely 100%. And one of the things that myself, Lisa, and Alex have been working on have been compiling a list of resources, vaping cessation resources, starting groups at the high school as well as the middle school. We've offered this to students, and we've kind of explained what these groups would look like. There's been surveys put out just so that they know that the resources are available if they would like to, utilize them. It's just a matter of the students coming forth and wanting the help. I think right now it's that it's still like the stigma, of, do we admit that we're struggling right now? Is it kind of acceptable? Is it not acceptable? If I go, or who else is going to be a part of the group? Am I going to be accepted in the group? So we're kind of still in that transition mode. However, through even MAC, there was a bunch of resources actually that I put together that MAC ended up, putting a flyer together, a pamphlet, and we have those resources. Unfortunately, it's still very limited, right? We're still learning, a lot about vaping, and there's just not a lot out there. There's a few websites, but they're just, they're all like text messaging services. So some of the kids don't really fully buy into that.
If you could also get information in to parents, because a lot of this is happening in the home more so than at school, and so parents know how they can get help for their kids and what's available in school and outside of school. I think that would be good too.
So at back to school night, we did offer. I mean, there was a bunch of resources for parents and what they can do to further help sons, daughters, whoever. With whatever they're struggling with, we pointed them in the right direction. So that stuff is available, but of course, if
Is it on the website?
newsletter. But if anyone has any questions, they can always reach out to us. We have those resources available.
But maybe put something on the website so parents can easily
Sure.
access.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go continue down the line.
Out of curiosity, did you ask about sexual activity on the survey?
I don't think we did.
No.
It's a tough one.
Well, I mean, I think that,
That's a
it's
tough
something
one.
that is out there. If we're talking about all these other topics, yes.
I mean,
especially
we're going to
if
send them off to school, and they're at their highest,
Right.
risk behavior, and off you go to the military, to college,
Yeah.
to the workforce. Good luck, So that needs to be addressed.
Right. So
make good
so maybe
choices,
for
sorry.
the future, yeah. And I
My
think
favorite line, make it joke, okay.
Yeah. I know it's an awkward conversation, but I think that it's something that
important.
as they get especially as they get older. Right.
I just had a question. In the survey, did you ask the children if they feel like they feel like they have or know how to get access to support when they're feeling those high stress levels? And did they feel like they could find easily tools? Was that a question, like how comfortable do you feel reaching out? Like, is that a like how many, like, did you get a feel for like the if there's, I know you said some of them are calm and cool when they're stressed, but did you ask, like, when you're stressed, do you know how to reach out for help? Did you ask that?
We didn't ask that.
Okay.
The closest we got was how do you handle stress,
How do you
or
handle
how do you
it?
cope under that, or how do you most feel when you're feeling stressed? That cool and calm question was kind of the closest we got to that, but that would be a really good idea of something that we should ask.
Like, are they, like, I guess one of the things is like, have you ever thought about reaching out for help? Like,
Right.
And maybe
And-
that would, like, give us a thing, because I think that's the first step to kind of,
Right.
if
Can
they know
you
how to do it or
identify-
if they're comfortable doing it. So maybe we can put that in the survey next year.
Right.
Or 2 years, whatever.
And can you identify
Thank you
those
for all that work.
resources?
That's a lot of data grab right there.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple of questions. How does a student get to participate in the survey?
One second. I'll take it. So we advertise, I think, via the website, and then on Genesis, when the students are getting grades for whatever marking period, we kind of line it up with a marking period. The permission slip with the letter explaining it is pops up on Genesis, so the parents have to click into. They have to read through it, and we provide the survey as well, so that parents can read the exact questions that would be asked. And they have to click if they agree or disagree for their student to participate. We have to have active consent for the survey because that's a state law. We need to have
Yeah,
active
of
consent to
course.
ask certain questions of students. So we need their parents'
So a
permission.
student has to actively seek to participate in the survey?
The parent has to actively seek
The
to
parent
participate.
has to, okay.
Well, the parent has to approve it, but then do all kids have to participate in it?
No, they in fact cannot participate in it
If they
if
have
their
not
parent
consent.
does not actively give them
Right, but
permission.
my point is, if your parent, like, say it pops up for me and I give consent, does that mean my kid's gonna participate in it
Yes.
or not?
Yes.
It does?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
It means that he's going
Allowed.
to be administered the survey,
Got it.
but he can refuse to answer all or one or anything in between questions on the survey.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
What percentage of the students actually participated? Do you know that?
I don't have a percentage, but we have the numbers.
The numbers. It's roughly, isn't it about 1,000 in each building?
I would say
It's roughly about 1,000 in
Okay.
each building.
Right, yeah.
Oh, okay.
last time we did it, it was 1,800, about 1,900 actually, and this year it was
it's-
about 1,800.
Yeah, so it's a little bit lower.
A little bit lower.
It's enough.
And do we,
It's still a pretty good percentage.
okay. Do we
participating.
know the percentage of those students that participated? Do we know what percentage of those students receive special education services?
We don't ask that. It's
We
not a
don't ask that
demographic
question.
You don't ask that question, okay. Because I've read 1,000 statistics on suicides right? And I read one last week where they surveyed, 1,000 cases, and over 60% of those cases, the students were receiving some sort of special education services, ADHD, whatever it may be. So if we can isolate a cohort in the next survey to try to figure that out, because we already know that those students are 3 times more likely to be involved in bullying incidents. We know, lots of different statistics about what's happening to those kids. And if there's a class of children that we can identify more quickly than we are now, that we can help sooner rather than later, is probably a good thing. And in terms of the school shootings, you can just look at those kids, right? I would say 80-90% of them were receiving special education services or should have been.
If we ask the question, it would have to be a demographic question, and the students would self-report since they're filling out the survey. So we wouldn't necessarily have it lined up with what our data is as far as if students are special education or not. But it's something to look into.
If we can look into it, that would be great.
There's a way to do that.
One more quick question building on what Mike said. So if the survey, the initial data point, are people who are coming forward and want to participate, the mom okays, the kids want to come and do it, I would argue that your statistics undercount the amount of stress, because the folks who are, I would think that the folks who are, more stressed and have a baseline anxiety that, is untreated for a while, which turns into depression, et cetera, those types of situations, they're not coming forward to say, hey, I want to participate in that survey.
Very possible.
All right, sorry.
So last but not least, Lisa, you'd put up a slide that said where we've come since 2017, and a large part of that is resources. And what the board, certainly this composition of the board, we focused on student well-being, mental health, and security. Mental health always coming first. And the reason that Christine, you had pointed out that some of the numbers are leveling off, well, that's great that they're leveling off, and that's in direct result to hiring additional staff. And thank you to the administration and the community for paying for that. You all voted to say, yes, we absolutely need to invest in mental health. That's the good news. The bad news is it's only leveled off, and we need to do better in getting those numbers decreased. So my question to you, and the things that scare me the most, of course, are the vaping, the pressure, the stress, the anxiety, and the suicide, and then the overlay of how much that's impacted by sleep, which is why the board has kind of been hounding Mike, figure out a way to get the kids in the upper grades more sleep. You're up in the ivory tower, figure it out, but we've got to get those kids more sleep. And this is something that Mike brought to us probably eight years ago. We've got to make that happen. We now have the data. We know that there's more suicide, there's no more stress, there's more vaping, there's more drugs, and the kids, they just need to get more sleep. And it's not as simple as, gosh, just have them go to bed earlier. Their circadian rhythm and the data is there. They cannot fall asleep earlier. They need to be able to sleep later in the morning at the upper grades. The science is there. That's, we don't have to fight about that one way or the other. But the question is, what do you do now with this data? How do we help you move this data in the right direction to get some of those numbers down? And Christine, I have to point out, when you give your slides to the other schools, and I hope you give it to all the schools, please point out that the Juuls cost $50. These kids have $50 in their pocket. I bet you if I asked every adult in this room, do you have $50 in your pocket right now? The vast majority would say no. Somehow these middle schoolers and high schoolers have $50 in their pocket to buy a Juul pack. So we have to get the message down to the parents, put how much this costs, so every time they're giving their kid $10 and $20 and not asking for the change back, it's going to a Juul. And please highlight that line that says 1 Juul equals 20 cigarettes. I don't know that you can repeat that enough times. Right, it's 20 cigarettes. That's a full pack of cigarettes for one of those silly little Juuls. So please, when you give that presentation, I need the parents to understand how much nicotine they're paying for. Because these kids don't have jobs. Sorry, there's no 6th grader that has a job that's earning $50 to go buy that Juul pack. So there's a direct correlation between how much trouble a kid can get into and the amount of money in their pocket. It's very simple. Parents have to get involved. And somehow we and I'm kind of looking at you guys, we need to drive that point home to the parents. they shouldn't have $50 in their pocket to hop on the train, get to Morristown, get a jewel pack, and be back within 20 minutes?
I think part of it is, from what I understand in my own experience, is that there's, debit and credit cards on, as an example, Amazon accounts.
Right, sure.
So a lot of times parents are not checking that. So they can, buy stuff from China. As an example, one of the
Sure.
presentations I had just gone to, fentanyl. Fentanyl's a big one. Drug dealers are trying to put the fentanyl in a lot of the THC concentrates because it's more addictive, which means people are coming back to it more.
Right.
And in addition to that, adolescents are buying from China because it's cheaper,
Right.
right, than buying a Juul starter kit, so to speak, here, right?
Right.
But the problem is that it's not regulated. It's an unregulated market.
Right. We have
So
no idea
don't
what they're
know
ingesting.
What's in? Yeah, we have no idea what's in them.
But again, if the parents keep an eye on how much money is in their kids' pockets when they
Right.
leave or go to their friends or go online,
Right.
we can.
So it's twofold.
Yeah, it's twofold, and it's takes a village. The other thing you mentioned is that intrigues me is the gender differential in some of these statistics, and we focus often on the negative. And Karen's making me read a book where it's talking about positive psychology, the happiness advantage, but it specifically says, I know, she missed that, but I'll tell her later what I said. It focuses. I think it'd be interesting to ask the gentleman that took the survey. Why did they answer those questions in that way? And then how do we impart that on some of our lady students? Asking them, why did they feel less stressed? Why did they report the numbers they reported, and impart some of those answers on the ladies to give them tools to say, oh, you know what, maybe I don't have to stress that much. So maybe focus on more on the positive psychology rather than always focusing on the negative psychology. If we need to really hone in on, why the ladies feel more stressed, let's ask the guys, why do they feel less stress? And then try and derive some data from that. But again, my big question is, what can we do as a community, as a board, as administration? How do we get these numbers down? How do we help you? And I don't necessarily looking for an answer, but maybe to come back to Mike and say, we need 4 more resources, as Sal indicated. We need to, bring in these programs. We need to somehow get the parents and make it mandatory that they attend social media classes.
That'd be great.
So you let us
How'd you
know
do that?
what you need. Again, not right this second,
Yeah.
but it's our job to make
Yeah.
sure that our students get what they need. So, again, through Mike, please get back to us.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Need more resources, but we have to figure out a way so that you're armed. That's a really bad word. So that you're in tune to how to seek out those at risk. And I think you'll find a board that wants to help you in very deep ways.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the information
Peter,
that
you
you
have a
have
question?
is very valuable, and it needs to be disseminated to every parent in this district. How do we do that? Parents sometimes don't actively go to websites and check out the school website, right? We need to figure that out, too.
Yeah,
Peter?
Yeah,
go ahead.
we definitely, we put some of this information like in our wellness quarterly that goes out to parents. But again, we track the logistics on that and looking at how many people open it and how long they look at it. And generally speaking, a lot of people will open it, but they look at it for a minute or less. And there's no way you can read everything and click on every link and look at all of our videos within 1 minute. So that's the other issue, is that how do we get them to actually read everything and look through all the stuff that we're putting in there? Because we feel like we try to stack those newsletters with some good information for parents that they could look at their own time, but generally speaking, they're just opening it and looking very quickly and moving on probably. So that's unfortunate.
Mike or
but
Peter?
We got to get to them.
One question. Ms. Weber's question intrigued me. The $50 jewel.
Yes.
How long does it last?
So
Is
the
it one use?
so a starter packet is what Christine showed, that the jewel, right? And then it comes with a charger, and then it comes with 4 pods. So each pod is equivalent to 20
pod.
cigarettes, which is
In
a
this
pack
little
of cigarettes.
thing.
But how long does the pod last? Is that
Depends.
It depends on how much you're smoking it, or how many rips you're taking off of
I
it.
mean, honestly, some kids could go through a pod a day. I had a student that was doing 3 pods in a day.
And I actually,
So
I did have a student
a
come
lot.
to me and was spending $1,000 a month.
Where are they getting that money?
Great question.
well, you have to keep in mind they also become little entrepreneurs themselves,
Yeah,
right?
with
So there's always going to be the one person that's going to go by
And mark it up and.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so how do I make
I
some
think
money
they're
on
called
this
dealers
to buy my own
in
stuff?
other.
What?
Okay. I think they're called dealers. All right. Well, thank you. I mean,
Thanks.
we.
If this were to go
when this is posted to
Mhm.
direct people to look at it.
Connor,
Would
can
be
you tell
one
us? Can you tell us how many people are online right now watching this presentation? Please don't tell me it's 13.
So you know what? Regarding social media, who are the big users of Facebook? All the old people, okay? And they all line the Berkeley Heights Community Forum, this community forum, you name it. So where should your information packet go? It should go to the Chatham Township Forum, the community forum. That's where it's going to get the most visibility. 13 people, wow.
Yeah.
And I've been talking about this meeting. This and the report of graduates are my two favorite. This being the most important, and that celebrating all the hard work that the staff puts in. But you know, we've been talking about this and advertising this meeting, and you know, 13 is a high number, but I thought it was going to be 113. So we may have to put your presentation online. I don't think parents realize the correlation between all of these behaviors and how much impact they have to change it.
Yeah, we have to empower them. Absolutely.
And take the money out of their pocket.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, let's spend 5 minutes on that. If you can make them quick, and if you have to stand up because they can't hear. Lisa, do you mind just answering 5 more minutes of questions? Some of the folks have.
Very brief. I really just wanted to comment and ask a question.
I'm sorry. Do you have a question for Lisa and the team?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Then I'm sorry. Why are you pointing at Mike?
Actually, I was going to applaud Sal and Ann and echo their observations. I will tell you that while this is not a study, over the last 3 days, I carpooled for homecoming, the Boy Scouts, mathnasium, and a sports team. And while I had them in the back of my minivan, I asked them all, I said, listen, guys, just tell me about this vaping. How often are you really seeing it, or what's happening? And a few of the kids, they'd said that they saw it a few times a week, but most everybody said at least daily, if not twice a day. And there was one young sophomore, a lovely young man, who said, Mrs. Press, whatever you think, it's more. And I actually don't vape so far. And then the girl sitting next to him said, it's much better if you go in the downstairs bathroom because there's less vaping, and go to the bathroom early in the day, and then I try to hold it until school's out. So I think I was like, wow, I was impressed. I will say that they all were taken very much aback by the death and the lung disease. So that comment that you made, Jill, about driving home the 20 cigarettes for one vaping episode, I think is so brilliant. I think that one little tagline is going to be so helpful. My question actually relates to what Mike had said about the special needs kids. You know, the op-ed piece from the New York Times talked about a study in suicide and looked at 60% of those suicides happened in kids with ADHD, second only to autism. And this survey didn't address the special needs population, which are clearly the more vulnerable. And I would ask that, although we can add it into next year's survey, is there any interest or any ideas that we might have to understand that these children learn differently? So the interventions, the assemblies, the signs, is there anything that we should be doing different for those students to make sure we get them as well?
Thanks, Dr. Press. Jane, you want to, and then if you can just address the comments at the end. Yep, thanks. Yeah, if we can get all the questions, and then the team can either, no, if you wouldn't mind, otherwise the 13 people that are dialed in can't hear. Sorry.
All right.
Did that slip out?
Jane Devlin. I would like to please ask, sort of tag teaming Mary Chambers' question when she was asking how likely, has anyone asked the children, how likely would you be perhaps to go for help? My question is, did anyone ever consider asking the children, the respondents of the survey, what they think might help them in some of these circumstances, what they think might be their stress relievers, etc. So get a little bit more input from the youth on their perceptions of solutions. And then I would also I'm just curious how often the rest and relaxation room is used in terms of not frequency, but maybe by numbers. And I also just wanted to inquire, please, you talked about the Lifeline and the vaping educational things, I think was said around the 8th and 9th grade ages. And I'm just curious why the Lifeline education wasn't extending as well through the upper grades at high school. And then finally, I'm just curious, who's the wellness supervisor?
Okay, very good. Thanks, Jane. Anybody else have? I just want to queue up all the questions so the team can answer them.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good, and then we can talk about public commentary after that. Ladies, would you mind just addressing Dr. Press's question, and then if you can, Ms. Devlin's, as best that you can comment.
Okay. So regarding our special education students and looking at that subpopulation, I mentioned before, but we'd have to kind of look at logistics with that. I think it's a really great idea if we could try to figure that out, because logistically the students are self-reporting. So the student would have to, while they're taking the assessment, gender identity, grade level, do you receive special education services? The student would have to, 6th through 12th grade, would have to voluntarily indicate that themselves. So that we would just have to kind of play around with and see what's a possible way of maybe doing that. And then, do you want
I
to
would
comment
definitely
on
say
that,
in
or-
terms of, students that have ADHD, I mean, this is very well documented. Kids with ADHD are much more likely to use drugs. We know that. It's very strong co-occurring morbidity with those two. So that is absolutely a population that, needs to be sort of looked at more closely, especially when it comes to substance use. I mean, if you talk to anybody in drug treatment centers, they will tell you kids that are in programs, many of them have ADHD, but that is that impulsivity, right, to make those decisions and things. So those kids, certainly that would be an avenue to maybe that type of population getting a certain type of messaging or curriculum or something that could be targeted. And certainly those are things we can flesh out with talking to Mike and things like that. But it is a population that I think is worthy of highlighting and exploring and seeing what those correlations do exist. Go ahead.
I was going to jump in about the Lifelines curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
So Lifelines is in 7th grade and 9th grade, and then the vaping curriculum is in 8th grade and 9th grade. 9th grade is when they get all of their health in the high school. We do repeat the Lifelines curriculum both in the middle of middle school and then again in high school.
But you don't bring it to like the 11th and 12th grade?
So they do, the 12th grade curriculum does talk about mental health, but they're not doing that curriculum again. But it is brought up again. They do a whole unit on mental health. They have guest speakers. They do all sorts of things with mental health, and especially around like college age, because that is a population of students that have a very high level of mental health issues. R&R room, I can answer that. Okay, so because this is sort of my thing, the R&R room, Andrea Murphy and I are the ones that got a Chatham Education Foundation grant, and we've got all this comfy furniture and decorated this room and provided this space because we really felt like there was a need in the high school to have an alternate space for kids to go where they could be more quiet, they could relax, they could just be in a more calming environment than being out in the gym or in the cafeteria. It is consistently used. Okay, we now actually have it as a NID, a non-instructional duty for teachers. So we always have a teacher in there. Before, Andrea and I covered it, and we were running around trying to figure out how to cover it every time it was open. So it's great because that means now we have this administrative support that says we will have a non-instructional duty. So there is a faculty member in there every single day. Every day there are kids in there. And I will tell you an interesting statistic that's watching this. The majority of people who use it are males.
Maybe that's why they're less stressed.
I was just thinking this.
Maybe. But when people come in and they see how many males are using this space, people make note of that. Like, oh, this is interesting. That there's more males
positive
in here
psychology.
than females. And they are there every day. We have there's a crew of probably close to about 20 that come daily, and then there's always the fill-ins. We do a lot of programming through. Like at least once a month we do some programming to bring kids into the wellness room. So we did essential oil workshop last week. We did live music sometimes. We just do things to try to make it interesting and draw kids in.
So what about, did you ask the youth what they would see as some of the
Oh,
solutions?
so something that,
Wellness room being one of the rest and relaxation being one of them, but
yeah, I
they might
mean,
come up with
something
other
that's
ideas.
kind of come out, and I've heard this a little bit through Challenge Day. You did Challenge Day, so you know what Challenge Day is like. Something that has come up is peers wanting other peer support. And I think that that is an avenue that we should further explore, for sure.
Excellent.
Finally, who's the wellness supervisor for the district?
Person's not
Oh.
in position. It's just that the board they are going to fill a position.
So it's
Yeah.
coming down, it's to be announced. Okay, thank you.
But thank you. Ladies, I know you're in your 14th hour of work today, so thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your help. Dr. LaSousa, back to you on your report.
That's my report. I will say that you will be hearing about all of this more as this year unfolds.
Right.
I can't help but mention that one thing that improves everything we've just talked about is sleep. And again, I know I'm a dead record or beating a dead horse here, but hundreds and hundreds of studies now have been conducted across the United States. And when high schools change the time they start their day to 8:30 or later, every risky behavior and problematic behavior decreases. The city of Norwalk just last month issued a big report. It's very comprehensive. I'm going to give all of you a copy of it. And it's essentially a plan and the rationale for moving their high school start time to a later time. You probably saw that the governor of California yesterday signed a bill into law that requires all high schools to start at 8:30 or later beginning in the year 2022. And this is something that, in my view, is an urgent issue for the district. Students with ADHD is a great example. Students with ADHD frequently struggle, obviously, with executive functioning, impulse control, and so forth. And those students, oftentimes, the more tired they become, the more hyperactive they become, because it takes so much energy to control one's impulses and to keep oneself in check, that they benefit inordinately in some cases from additional sleep. So we have to tackle the sleep monkey, and we have to find a way to get our students more sleep. In the survey that the SACs didn't mention this very specific point, but the majority of our juniors and seniors report getting 6 hours or less sleep a night. The majority are getting less than 6 hours. 6 hours or less sleep a night. That's not acceptable. It's not healthy, and it exacerbates every other problematic behavior that we are concerned about. So that's something I can promise you you're going to hear about more as this year progresses, and a number of the other issues that we've been talking about for the last hour you're going to hear more about too.
Okay, excellent. So just to repeat, you said when a school changes their start time to 8:30, every single risky behavior trends down.
Many of the behaviors that we're talking about
trend
correct.
down.
Suicide ideation,
The risky
depression,
behaviors
anxiety,
trends down.
poor grades, car accidents, all of that goes down.
And the group that's getting the least sleep is engaging in the most risky behavior. So
True.
the 11th and 12th graders. So if we can get them more sleep, the group that we're most concerned about, that we're sending off within a year or two to make decisions on their own, we need to get them the most help now and trickle this behavior down. Okay, hopefully we'll hear more on how you're going to figure out how to get our kids to school later. A huge part of this is logistics. It's simply busing. It's not philosophical, it's not budgetary, it's busing. There is a shortage of bus drivers. That is the biggest hurdle right now. So it's not like, oh gosh, we don't want to put resources to it. It's not that Mike hasn't been thinking about it for close to a decade.
Other kids go to school earlier?
Popular with a lot of the people who would have to send their kids to school earlier. But that is essentially what Norwalk is proposing to do.
I mean, many districts are looking at it through different lenses, and I think one way that we can move ahead, inch forward, is to start conversations outside this boardroom. Have a staff participation, and how would this impact our staff? How would this impact our families with two working parents who we need to get information so we can make an informed decision. We know how it will impact our students, and we know that it will impact them positively, but there are a lot of other players in the field. And so I think we need to make an informed decision. I know we have a bus issue and shortage, and we have to look at that really critically and make sure that we can safely transport our students, no matter how we do it, whether we flip or not. But we have way too much on this agenda to talk about this right now, but I think it's something that we need to start sooner than later, because these conversations have to happen over a long period of time in order for this to move ahead.
That was Michelle's hint for me to move on.
I
So,
just thought we should
Dr.
get
L'Souza,
to the
your
agenda.
report is concluded?
Complete.
Very good. Peter, moving on to business administrator.
Just a brief construction update. The high school auditorium, the contractor continues to make progress. Just about all of the sheetrock has been installed.
Middle school,
I'm
right?
sorry, the middle school. Let me grab the microphone. That'll help. Both the sheetrock and the ceiling have received its first coat of prime paint. The ductwork is continuing to be installed, and as the steel is delivered, it is being installed. The main project now for the steel is installing the catwalk, and once the ductwork in the main seating area is done, the ceiling will receive its final coat of paint, and then the lights and the acoustic clouds can be installed. So they're making great progress. On October 9th, when we had the last construction meeting, the representative from the seating manufacturer was there, finalizing all the measurements on the configuration of the seats. Learned now, and obviously this is the third seating vendor we dealt with, since the first two from the high school we had our issues with, but learned that once he measures and does the layouts, the seats are manufactured to the specifications of the floor. So that the seat in, for example, row 1 is not the same as the seat in row 20, because the seat in row 20 compensates on the angle of the floor as it progresses towards the, back of the auditorium. So that's how they compensate for that. He did comment that for seating manufacturers, the busiest 2 times of the year are in anticipation of Christmas and in anticipation of Easter, since the seating manufacturer does a lot of church pew work. So that is a priority. He said at the worst case scenario, based on the production and fabric, they would anticipate installing the seats the week of January 13th. That is a huge negative, and Patisseau, we asked them, we wanted them in December. But the plus side, if there is, of January 13th, the contractor is still on target to have all of his work done by December 13th. So the only plus factor in having the seats done in January is once the architect does all the punch list work, the contractor, with the exception of the seats being installed, can be totally done by the beginning of January. Seats get installed, the auditorium gets put to use. And all of the sound and lighting work will be done by December 13th so that the staff can start training, playing, and learning how to use it, even though there are no seats in the auditorium.
Can we get a CO without a seat?
No.
We did at the high school, I thought.
I have to check that, since a different building area. I will address that once we get the word from the contractor, since that is the borough, or actually Madison's building department, not there. But we may be able to get a TCO so that they can, that the lighting crew and Mr. Lawrence can play and learn how to use the lights and the sound equipment.
The middle school play, that was
done.
at the high school, at the auditorium up here, correct?
The middle school play, according to Principal Jaworski, is the last week of January, and they will be practicing in the cafeteria and partially in the middle school cafeteria and partially the high school. So it would only be a matter of how to get the set, once the seats are installed, how to get the set up on the stage.
So it's going to be at the middle school?
Well, we don't know yet. Right now they're planning.
The middle school wants to really, really have it at the middle school.
We really, really want them to have
So
it.
they are, they're not just making the assumption now that it will be at the high school. They're keeping their fingers crossed. They're working with, facilitating the work so that they're in a position to enable the production to happen at the middle school, even though they will not have been able to have all of the rehearsals take place at the middle school.
But I've been asking this for months, and almost joking about it. We were told December 15th, then December 30th, then beginning of January. Why are we finding out now that the seats can't be in until January 15th? Like, why is this always last minute? Are our architects not asking the right question? Are we not asking the right question?
I think the architect is
From Vito.
is doing a good job as well as the contractor, and the contractor found this seating seating vendor, and the vendor seemed very reputable and true to his word, because we told him we wanted seats installed, and right away he said, I can't make an empty promise. I'm giving you worst case scenario. And he said, if I give you worst case scenario, if I come in sooner, I look like a hero and there's no problem. I don't want to tell you December and then say, well, I'll be here at the end of I'll be here in the middle of January or the second week in January. So he's painting a worst case picture based on material, fabric, and availability. Once he measures and goes to the factory, we get a better update.
And his worst case scenario date now, tell me again.
His worst case scenario was the week of January 13th, and he said 1 week to install seats.
Wait, January 13th complete, or he starts installation
January
on
13th is a Monday, starts, completes by the end of the week.
And when does the play begin? The middle school, school production?
The last weekend of the month, which I'm going to go on a limb, is the 27th and 28th. Just give me 1 second.
Week after. All right, so a week.
It is the 25th and 6th.
Okay.
So they would have a week to transition.
And do all of those parties that you mentioned that are doing such a very good job understand that we have a production scheduled for the last week of
Yes,
January?
because that was discussed with the contractor and Principal Jaworski, myself, the architect, and John Cataldo. So.
And there are no financial implications because they haven't met the deadlines that were previously established?
I haven't even broached that issue yet, to the fact I'm waiting, like I said, the week of January 13th was the contractor's worst case scenario. He didn't know what would happen until he, measured and placed the order. So.
And they don't get paid. I mean, they're not getting paid until it's done. I mean, Peter's still withholding money from the high school.
If we don't meet that date, then we can.
The next two construction meetings, we'll have much better information by the middle of November. So.
Right. Again, if they don't meet that date, I really don't need the chairs until the summer. So they're not going to get paid until the summer. Right? So remind them that if they don't meet the date that we need them, it doesn't help us to get them there the week after the play. But I think we're making our point.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Peter. Okay. Just to move quickly through committee reports, and just to call an audible, we did some switching around of the committee structure. So on the policy and planning is going to be addressed by Lotta Kenny for the time being. So personnel, Ms. Ciccarelli?
We have not met since our last meeting. We're meeting on November 4th.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Michelle Clark?
Curriculum met prior to this meeting. We discussed a music trip that's potentially scheduled for the high school in the spring. Ms. Chase gave us the report on NJSLA testing from grades 3 up that will be reported out on November 4th to the full board. We also had a continued conversation with Ms. Winters, the math supervisor, about the Chatham Middle School math offerings and the variables that are considered with certain programs at the middle school.
Okay, great. Thank you. Finance and facilities, Matt?
Yes, we also met just prior to this. Just dealt with some issues, some landscaping down at the Methodist Church in the middle school that we need to take a deeper look at. There was an issue in terms of lacrosse helmets and as to whether or not the school wanted to purchase them and develop a program similar to what they do for football that we kind of pushed back on a little bit. We did our annual review of the costs in the athletic budget. Nothing really different from year over year. And last but not least, we did look at the referendum, and we are going to be sending out a letter in the near future, much like we did in the last referendum, listing the projects, the costs of the projects, the reasons behind the projects, so we can get additional feedback from the taxpayers in terms of kind of what their appetite is for this referendum and the projects that we're undertaking. Just so you know, potentially the referendum would not be until September 2020, so 11 months from now.
11 months from now? Does it touch on any of the tennis courts over at Colony, or no?
That one we did not, because it just came in
Okay.
We do need to take. a
That
look
might
at
be some feedback.
Right.
But again, those are owned by the township, so thank you very much. Policy and planning, Ms. Kenny?
We have not met since the last meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. I don't know if anybody has any liaison reports. Excellent. Matt, you want to go first?
So Chatham Recreation. So as you know, in town, we have had, as long as I've been here, we have a tradition that the only team on a consistent basis, the consistency being of 4 or 5 weekends that can host anything on Sunday before noon, was the youth football program. And we were approached by the club softball program, because I guess a lot of people deal with tournaments all the time, and asked whether or not they would also get a dispensation to host events on a consistent basis before noon on Sunday. I don't know what the response from the township or the borough was. They brought all the liaisons together. I said to them, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 11 or 12 years, and there has never been any appetite from the Board of Education to adjust that rule. It's a good tradition. It's something that we've kind of held to. So I don't know, in my opinion, and this was my opinion only, that we probably would not find a lot of support for altering that rule, because if we alter it for them, we need to alter it for everybody, and I think it would kind of go against what the Board of Education stood for since I've been involved, but that's the, again, I don't know what the township said, I don't know what the borough said, but I kind of felt that the history would maintain itself in terms of what we would be willing to do from our facilities, and keeping that rule would probably be continued.
And you're just talking about the district-owned facilities. You're
District-owned
not talking about
facilities, yeah.
any of the other fields in town. Excellent. Somebody else? A lot of you had a...
I'd just like to remind everyone that Chatham Education Foundation is hosting its 7th annual trivia night on Saturday, November 16th, starting at 7 p.m. This year, they're going to amplify the insanity by making more tables available at Mountain View, and so keep that in mind. And there's still going to be a second location at Fish and Game. Registration for the trivia night will open this Thursday, October 17th at 9 p.m. So if you could save the date and register at chathamedfoundation.org, that would be great. And lastly, the first grant cycle will close on October 31st, and we will have started. They've started to receive grants, and they're looking forward to sharing them publicly.
Excellent. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. And just a quick note on the performing arts and also the borough liaison. The marching band recently competed in a competition and took first place in Randolph. Congratulations to the Cougar Band. You can hear them again. They're done with their competition season, but they're playing this Saturday. This Saturday's Cougar weekend, isn't it? So they'll be playing at the football game on Saturday night, so you still have an opportunity to hear the band. The fall drama is The Crucible, and just mark your calendars. November 22nd and 23rd are the performance nights. The senior citizen dinner will be the night before, the 21st. And last week, the middle school put on their production of, this Seussical Junior is the play, and they just completed casting. I apologize. So there'll be a parent meeting coming up on Wednesday for all cast members. And the dates of that are, as we just discussed, January 30th and 31st and February 1st. And just quick note from the borough, Chatham Borough Liaison, Matt and I attended one of the last council meetings where the developer that owns the property on River Road between Watchung and I believe Crown Oil, that corner, presented, what the impact of the town would, what the buildings would look like, how many school age they predict based on their studies. And Matt did get up and address the crowd and just, mentioned that, I don't know, Matt, do you want to speak to it? Matt just covered, that 30 kids do in fact have an impact on the school. And a lot of times they say, well, it's only 30 kids. But 30 kids does in fact have an impact on the school. And the township committee and the borough committee are well aware of it. And, dialogue is continuing. So, some people say, well, the Board of Ed should do this and the Board of Ed should do that. Well, the Board of Ed says you have elected officials in the township and the borough, and they're very capable and they're very qualified, and that's who you elected, and we will work with them. But I just want to let you know that we do attend the meetings, and we work with the various groups as needed. So thank you, Matt, for attending and speaking up. Does anybody else have any other items they want to throw out there? Nope. Very good. Thank you. So just moving along quickly, I'd like to make a motion to move the minutes of the September 16th public and executive session. Peter, could you remind us who was not?
Matt and Sal need to abstain.
Matt and Sal. Okay. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I was not there for the full executive session.
Okay. Duly noted, but I do need a second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Do I have to do it again?
No.
Thank you. Okay, so, long awaited. We have our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate the meeting in an orderly meeting, please permit all to be heard. Speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. And if you wouldn't mind, when you get to the podium, if you could just introduce yourself, sign in. There's another opportunity if you want to wait till the end. That is sometimes inviting as well. We can get through the agenda and then come back up. Seeing none? Okay. We're going to go right to the action items, which will only take a few moments. Is all that time talking?
Okay, I'll sign in afterwards. So we get this moving. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Williams. On Tuesday, October 8th, my 7th grade daughter called me telling her bus was in an accident. I immediately called her. From what I could hear, between the chaos of all the students in the background, it seemed to be a fender bender. She said she was fine. I asked if I should come and get her. She said she wasn't sure, so I waited. I called again, and no word. I called the middle school, and I said my daughter had been in the accident, and they said they just got the word of the accident, and they'll be sending an alert to parents. I never got that alert. I asked the middle school who from the middle school was at the scene of the accident. They said that no one was there that they knew of. I talked to my daughter again. She said the police were on the scene and they were talking to each student, asking for their name, their date of birth, and their address. I called the district offices, asking for information about the accident. They said 2 alerts were sent out to parents and not sure why I didn't get that alert. I get alerts from the school all the time. They said it was an issue on my end. I talked to 5 other parents who had students on that bus, and they said they didn't get alerts either. We're talking about an accident here with students from your schools. Parents had no information on the accident. Was I supposed to pick up my child? Was the bus drivable? Were the kids okay? Was the bus driver okay? I didn't have answers to any of these questions. My main concern here is that no one from the middle school or the school district was at the scene of the accident. I was told by administration that this is not policy. They wait for the police to call them and let them know if they should come to the scene. This is absurd. These are your students. Do you not have empathy for these students? Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're nervous to talk to police. I was told that most of the students on the bus would have cell phones and that I would know more information about this accident than the district did. Not all students have cell phones, and not all students have the confidence to ask another student, can I borrow your phone so I can call my mom to tell them we got in an accident? And what if these were younger kids? They don't have cell phones. It should be policy that someone from the district is on scene of every accident with a school bus, not only to support your students, but also to support the police and the bus driver in this type of situation. Let's say there was 40 to 50 middle school kids that were on this bus. You have 2 police officers on scene, a frazzled bus driver, taking care of all these kids that have been in school all day long. Whom from the district was on site of this accident? There was nobody there. We need to show some compassion and change this policy immediately. Thank you.
Up with policy. Any additional comments? Or again, there's another opportunity for public commentary.
I'm Amy Reale. And what else did you ask me to say? Did you ask me to say something else? Or a student, 2 students? Just introduce. Okay. I just forgot for a minute if I had to say anything else. Amy Reale. Okay, well, I'm here to give a CPEG update. CPEG is the Special Education Parent Advisory Group. So I wanted to let everyone know, including the 13 watching, that last week we launched our website, chathamcpeg.com, and I'm happy to say we've had over 400 hits already. So I encourage anyone to go to our new website. There's a lot of information, a lot of resources on all topics related to special education. I wanted to give an update on our literacy task force. we have partnered with Dr. Kim Lanza to select speakers for the mandatory 2-hour dyslexia training. So that's been a joint effort. I think we heard that their teachers will not be allowed to participate on our task force, which we were hoping for, considering the task force would have a beginning and an end, and we felt like that would help the partnership. So maybe we can still talk about that. But the task force is also publishing their first newsletter very soon, and hopes to do about 4 a year, which will go out to faculty and staff. And then, the big announcement is that our first speaker this year will be Dr. D'Elia, who will present an overview of a special education, which will be in this room from 7 to 9. And I know that there's a debate for Borough Council candidates the same night, but hopefully parents interested in learning more about our district's Special Services Department will come out to hear Dr. D'Elia go through the IEP process and respond to a Q&A at the end. It's a busy time of year, so hopefully we can. It's this Thursday, October 17th from 7 to 9, and it's right here at the Chatham High School Media Center. Thank you.
Any additional, Ed? Do you have a question? Oh. Okay, I thought you're getting up. Okay, very good. Very good. So we'll move this current public commentary section, and again, there's another opportunity at the end. So just moving on to the action items. Personnel. Is it?
Yes. I'd like to move
Thank you, Ann.
agenda items A1 to A18 on the regular agenda for vote.
Second.
Any questions for Ann or Beth or Dr. LaSousse on any of the personnel items? Again, just a reminder, these are posted on Friday, so we've had an opportunity to read them over the weekend. Any additional questions for anything on personnel? No, seeing none. Peter?
Sure. Agenda items A1 through 18. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items pass 8-0.
Great, thank you. Finance and facilities, Matt?
Yes, I'd like to move action items B1 to 19 on your regular agenda. No, gotta fight. Just a couple donations, one from the Washington Avenue PTO, in the amount of about $1,500 to, looks like freshen up the courtyard at Washington Avenue. Another Washington Avenue PTO donation to be used to purchase 7 really good buddy rugs to be used by the first graders.
Really good ones.
Is that like the Buddy Bench?
I don't know. Yeah, donation to the Chatham High School in the amount of $1,000 from the Arconic Foundation to provide support for the robotics program, and then one acceptance for the donation of the Chatham Performing Arts in the amount of $1,200. It's going to be used at its discretion.
Isn't it for a bassoon?
Oh, it's for a bassoon. Oh, I thought that was the name. Just what a
It's for a
lack of musician
special.
I am.
It's for a really good bassoon.
Which is a very tall, skinny
Yeah.
instrument.
Oh, sorry. I misread it. I thought they were donating a person named Lesher Bassoon.
Are we allowed to accept people? Because we could use another student assistance
We're
counselor.
accepting him. I don't have to pay for the guy, but we're accepting him at $1,200. Shows you how much I know about musical instruments.
Sadly, I had 3 sons that played the bassoon.
Really?
Yeah.
Not me.
I don't know how that happened.
I don't even know what. Yeah.
I think they picked it because the instrument stays at school and they didn't have to take it home. But excellent. Any questions for Matt or Peter on anything finance or facility related? Excellent. Peter, would you mind?
Agenda items B1 through B19. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers? Yes. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark? Yes. Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
I have a yes on B1 through 15 and 17 through 19 with an abstention on 16.
Duly noted. Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items pass 8-0 with the exception of B17, which is passed 7-0-1.
16.
B16, sorry.
On those.
I move C1 and 2, and there can be no discussion.
Okay. Sal, you second that?
Second.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Peter?
Sure, agenda items C1 and C2. Mr. Gilfillan?
Oh,
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark? Ms. Kenny? Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items pass 8-0.
Excellent, thank you. And just moving over to policy, Ms. Kenny, would you mind?
Yes, I'd like to move action item D1 for vote.
Second.
Any additional discussion on any of the policy items? These are second reading and adoptions. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent.
Duly noted, passes 8-0.
Great, thank you. So we're just moving on to board business, and I just want the board to note that we've inserted goals here that you've all had an opportunity to look at, and I've received some feedback, and they've been modified based on feedback. I don't know if we want to discuss it, but I do want to highlight that, the board wanted to document what our high levels of focus are, and there's certainly social and emotional well-being of the students. That includes getting more sleep, start time, what we talked about, the transition. We're seeing difficulty in transition from school to school at those grades, and certainly taking action on the survey that we just spoke about. Goal number 2, sound fiscal management, continuing sound fiscal management, which includes capital improvement items. And then number 3, safety and security. So you've all had weeks and weeks to look these over. I don't know if we want to make any changes, if we want to discuss it further, if we can adopt these. We can make any changes at any time throughout the year. We can add, we can subtract. So I know you've had time to look at it. If you're ready to vote on it, that's great. Does it require a vote, or do we just adopt them? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Whether we needed a vote or not, there's your vote. The other item I wanted to bring up, we had a student come to us that wants to create a position at the high school to have a student non-voting member of the board who just sits and maybe reports back to her classmates or his classmates, whoever happens to be in the facility. Dr. LaSousa and I met with this student. It's going to also be part of a gold award project for this particular student, which part of a gold award has to have a component of sustainability. So this isn't just something that she wants to do this year and forget about it. The program has to be sustainable, and she's working with her counselor and some of the administration to come up with a selection process and how the role would be shaped. Certainly on the surface it looks positive. Some of the cons are, a student takes something back and said, oh my God, they're going to change, our start time, and creates a rally and everybody storms out of the building. We're certainly not looking for that, but we would certainly like, feedback from the students. And, if we're talking about something that just you're off your rocker and you have no idea how that's really going to be implemented, it'd be nice to have somebody here, that evening that can maybe speak on a topic or do some research with their classmates and come back with some statistics and what they've found. So I just wanted to maybe take the temperature of the board. Do you have any thoughts on that? Are you in favor of it?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
As
on
long as we define it and we can keep going forward, and we can drum up more students to fill it going
Sure.
forward.
Yep, that's the goal.
Really kind of define it.
So I just wanted to make sure we give the student the green light to continue to move the project forward, continue to work with the administration. I'm going to email her and ask her if she can maybe do a short presentation on the November 4th. I think it's taking a little bit more shape now, where she can share some of the, how it will unfold and how she plans to implement it. And I believe January was her time frame to be able to start having students sit in on the board meetings and actively participate. And originally she said, well, maybe the board should select it. And we said, no, it should be a representative of your student body. They're going to work on the selection. They should pick somebody who they think will, best reflect what's going on in the schools and the students. So board has approval to move forward. Mike, if you would then work with the administrative side, and I will email the student back and let her know where to go, and just to continue to work with the administration and her counselor to move this forward. And November 4th, I'll invite her to the meeting.
Perfect.
Okay, fantastic. I did not have anything additional for board business. We do have one more announcement. I didn't forget you. I didn't forget you, Mary. I didn't forget you. So I passed the baton to Mary, and I do that with sadness. I was hoping she'd change her mind, but I'm passing it over anyway.
I'm sorry. I usually try and do good news, and it is good news, but it's sad news as well. There's a song out there by one of my favorite artists called Life Changes. His name is Thomas Rhett. And it's about how you make a plan and somebody laughs, and you have to make a move when you have to make a move. And unfortunately, this is going to have to be my last Board of Ed meeting. My husband's job situation has changed for the good. We're very excited about that. However, we're uprooting ourselves and leaving the state of New Jersey to follow that. And we've been here for 24 years, and we have loved every minute of it. I really told myself I wasn't going to cry.
How's that going?
Not so well. But first and foremost, I really want to thank everyone who came out and voted for me and allowed me to take on this position. I am so grateful for this opportunity that you gave me. I've loved this town and just want to make it better. I also wanted to let everyone know who has come to me since I took on this position and has taken the time to reach out and speak with me about issues that they would like to see addressed. Know that I have taken that information and passed it on to the powers to be here as best I can, and know that things are in the works, and we're going to keep working to keep those things going. And hopefully, as we're starting to see results already in things that we've done. So they're going to continue that work, and I appreciate people taking the time to come to me with that. I'd also like to thank everyone on this board for helping me to do better. I know that we didn't always agree on everything, but I think at the end of the day, we all had the same purpose in mind, and we want to do what's best for our children and our staff and our administration and our town. And I appreciate that. I also want to thank our administration and our staff for educating me and helping me be better, and taking on some of the things that I ran on. You can see that in our goals that we came out with this year, that one of my biggest platform was cybersecurity, and we're seriously taking that on over the last couple of years, and I'm grateful for that. But I just want to say thank you, and this has been a great opportunity. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity, and to come join us, because this is a great journey, and you learn a lot about yourself and about the town. And all I know is that we have some people who care a lot about what they do, and about the people up here who are making these decisions that are difficult at times. And I just want to thank everybody for working with me and allowing me to take on this role. It's been more rewarding than I ever thought it would be. So with that, my husband and I will be leaving town. I'm not exactly sure. I think this is going to be my last meeting. I'm not exactly sure when the final documents are all going to be signed. But I just wanted to thank everybody for this opportunity. It's been one of the best decisions I ever made.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for your time. I don't know if everybody knows, but I just want to remind folks that Mary didn't have any children that went through the Chatham Public School District, and it was invaluable to have some of her insight at times, because I've been here 26 years and 3 knuckleheads through the district, and sometimes you forget, and Mary would ask some pointed questions. Why do you do that? Or how did that come about? And you're like, oh wait, you got to take a step back. So it's really been super helpful. A lot of people at the beginning are, well, she's never had kids in the district, but that lens has been really invaluable to us to ask some of the questions that we kind of glaze over a little bit. So thank you, Mary, for challenging us as well. And we've always said most of the times we don't get along. Not that we don't get along, but we do have some heated debates. And the nice thing about that is there's a better product that's on the other end of that. So, you get the best of all of us. So thank you, Mary, for helping us also to step up.
You guys have been great. And I commend the efforts that we do as a board and our administration does. It's not an easy task, especially, I think my biggest learning thing was the unfunded mandates that come down.
Isn't that fun?
Ugh. Don't get me started. My poor husband, he hears about it all the time.
Okay. Thank Dan for us as well then.
I will.
So thank you for your assistance. But I did want to pass it to Mike, Mr. Ryan. He had mentioned we do like to end on a positive note. And Mike, you had mentioned to me a couple weeks ago that you had some super positive news. I don't know if you recall it or if you have something else that you want to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Chatham Football Club has a really good football program, and my son happens to be on the 5th grade team, and these kids have not played football before, There's only 2 kids on the team that have played football before. And if this meeting was last week, the news would have been better because we got trounced on Sunday. But the team is actually doing pretty good. The defense is doing really well. And again, these kids have never played tackle football before, and they're 1-2-1. So they haven't lost every game. So I think that's a pretty good shout out to the coaches. They're really a well-coached team, heads up football. And I think going forward, and there's 33 kids on the team, so going forward, we're going to have a pretty positive football program.
And didn't you tell me one of them hit a field goal in regular?
Yeah, and the best part is there's a kid on the team that can kick field goals. So
Like
the
legit?
first game that they won, we scored a touchdown. They scored a touchdown. They didn't get the extra point. They went for 2 because they can't kick field goals. We scored. Our kid kicked a 25-yard extra point. Wow. To win the game, and the kid's 10-year-old.
The kid's 10. The kid's 10.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The Jets could use him.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So we now have our second opportunity for public commentary. Anything that anybody, whether you've heard it or not yet, if you'd like to. Hi, Dr. Press.
I'm going to be quick. Well, first, Mary, on behalf of CPAG, we very much appreciate the CPAG has always viewed you as a person who always questions, and if they didn't understand something or say, why is that, you've been a person that we've looked at and say, we've always been very happy for your commentary. And it reminds me that, when 2 people agree, nothing ever gets any better. So on behalf of CPAG, we thank you very much. I wanted to make a quick comment about the first goal you have about looking at the transitions. CPAG was interested in the transition from 3rd to 4th grade, realizing that many of the IEPs are a spawn of the elementary school experience. And so somewhere in those first couple years, they get an IEP and their issues or the challenges are identified, and now they're quickly moved to another school with a new case manager. And we think that when the board begins looking at examining these transitions, if we could think about the children who have IEPs and how those transitions go, and this may be a little cart before the horse, but we would ask that it become standard practice that the receiving school have a representative at the final IEP meeting of the delivering school, rather than, you hear that this is what they're going to do there. And then maybe you find out that there's something even better or something different at the new school. But to have that face-to-face with your new case manager or new rep from the new school, the CPAG thinks that would be helpful.
Good evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. I know it's late, so I'm going to do this quickly. I have 3 comments. And I have some comments that I'll save for next time around. I'd like, this is very random, I'd like to draw your attention to a story in the Wall Street Journal. This is the September 26th edition. It's a Thursday. And in the Journal every day they have a column that is kind of focused on things they feel to be amusing, quirky, offbeat, odd, underreported. And it's oriented toward people who are probably, simple-minded and easily amused. And my wife will tell you I am both of those. The headline on this one is very relevant. It says, "Teens snooze, grade school students lose. The young start earlier and ask, why are you doing this to me?" It focuses on the Fairfax County school system. Fairfax County and Morris County are kind of, more or less equal. And it seems that Chatham has been late to the game with regard to adjusting times, start times for different grades. Fairfax County has been doing it since 2015. And what they didn't do is they didn't survey middle school students. And it appears that middle school students are decidedly unhappy about the situation. It also talks about the logistics and the problems with busing. So you can take a look at that and read it. Second comment is, I think you know that I've had things to say about social media since I've started to come to these meetings, and I have the flip phone to prove it. It is baffling to me that parents, especially given the level of education in this town, do not understand the corrosive nature of social media and don't understand that Mark Zuckerberg is not doing them any favors. The problems then get outsourced to the school district, and we've got to run around and spend money to solve them. Pardon me while I shake my head over that one. And last but not least, Mary, thank you for your service. Our kids played soccer and softball together. I've known you for a long time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Of the board fill the township vacancies, and the borough members of the board fill the. So anybody that wants to can, contact the board offices if they want to apply. Sometimes folks reach out and try and convince people to take the position. It's not always an easy sell because it's hundreds of hours of time and dinners missed with your family. So we try and not lead with that when we talk them into it. But it's not that bad. Thank you, Mary. That's kind of you. So typically you would just apply. Just. I don't mean a full resume. What? What's that? Oh, anybody in the township? The township typically does the initial interviews.
It's Matt, Sal, myself, and
No. Sal Arnock, Matt Gilfillan, Lotta, and Michelle are all township. So hopefully we'll get some interest. If you know of anybody, let them know.
We need
An MBA.
A year and what, 2 months?
Yeah, there's
12?
about a year left on your term, so the person would fill that.
I was going to run again.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh,
that
see?
was the plan.
Telling us now. So they would just be for a year term, and then you would run for re-election or not, depending on how that year went. So let us know if you're interested, if you're from the township, or if you want to move to the township and then apply. That's also fine.
I'm happy to speak to anyone who's interested.
Yeah, reach out. That'd be
and
great.
spread the word. Let people know. That
Thank you, Ed, for asking that. I should have mentioned that earlier. Any additional? Amy, did you? Okay. Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We do have an executive session, so thank you, everybody. I make a motion to close this public session. I'm sorry, Mike, you had a comment?
There will be action, correct?
Yeah.
Action will be taken. Thank you very much
In
for
the
coming
executive
out.
session?
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.